Hello, my name is Zach Gibbs, and I'm a content developer within education services inside Juniper Networks. And today we will be discussing the Sky ATP SMTP JWeb Learning Byte. Okay, so here is the example. In this example, in the topology, we have vSRX1, which is in the middle, which connects to the client zone, which Nancy and Walter, those users, are a part of through Gigi000 on vSRX1. And then it connects to the server zone, which is where the email server is connected in on Gigi001. And then vSRX1 is connected to the internet. So then that way we can submit files to the Sky ATP cloud. Okay, so let's talk about the criteria for the example. vSRX1 is already enrolled with SkyATP. Users will be using SMTP to send emails to the email server. So we need to configure SkyATP to quarantine malicious messages. The recipients can request the release of quarantine emails. We need to create a custom message, and then we need to send email notifications of quarantine emails to the administered email of juniperlbs@gmail.com. Okay, with that, let's go ahead and jump to the Sky ATP web UI and get this started. All right, so here is the Sky ATP web interface. And so let's go to the configure section to get going. Let's go to email management, SMTP. And we can see here that we already have some default configuration present. And so the good thing is that a lot of the stuff we need to do is already done for us. That's great. So the action to take, we want to quarantine malicious messages. That's great. The release option, we want to have the recipients can release the email, or we can have recipients request the release of email. So we're going to select for the recipients to be able to request the release of the email. Then we need to specify that address that they can request the release of the email from. Then we have our custom message, and we can just leave this at the default. That's fine. The subject shows quarantine notification, shows a custom message of dear user, and that user variable will be filled in with whichever user it is. And then we have a custom link that the users can view the message in the quarantine portal. So let's click save here. And then we need to add an email to the administrators who receive email notifications section. So when an email is quarantined or when an email is released, the administrator gets notified. So let's go ahead and click the create button for that. And then we'll type in the juniperlbs@gmail.com. Leave the default of quarantine notification and release notification selected. Click OK. And so we're good to go there. So let's go ahead and jump to JWeb for vSRX1. All right, so here is the JWeb interface for vSRX1. We first need to go to configuration mode, and then to security services, threat prevention, then policies. And we need to create a new threat prevention policy. We need to name this. Learning Byte Threat Prevention Policy is what that stands for. And then we need to include infected host profile in policy. We need to click that checkbox. And let's move that up to a 7 for the threat score. And then we need to click the include malware profile in policy checkbox. And we have two different options here. We have HTTP file download and SMTP attachments. Now we want to scan SMTP attachment, so let's select that option. And I want to point out something here. The actions field shows enforcement actions are set in SkyATP. That's why we had to go to SkyATP first. We had to configure those enforcement actions. So we can turn on the log for this, and then we can set this at 7, or whatever you need in your environment is fine. And then log settings, let's log only block traffic. So let's click OK, but we're not done yet. We could commit this configuration, but it's not going to do anything. We need to attach this threat prevention policy to a security policy. So let's go ahead and go to the security policy workspace, which is under security services. Click rules, and then let's create a new security policy rule. We need to name the rule. We need to select the source. The source is the client zone. That's the zone that the Nancy and Walter user are in. Then we need to select the server zone for the destination zone. That's where the email server is. Then for event security, notice how everything is grayed out, including threat prevention policy. That's because we need to change the rule action from deny to permit. And once we do that, these options are not grayed out, including the threat prevention policy. So we need to select that field and select our threat prevention policy. Then click next, and click finish. And then now we need to click the commit options button and commit the configuration. Okay, so now that the configuration has been committed, we can jump to the client device, which has the users, and send some emails. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so here is the client device. We're going to send an email. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that both email accounts are on a single VM. The reason why I did that is to save resources so I don't have to fire up 2 VMs. So just keep that in mind. We're going to send an email from one address to another address, from the Walter address to the Nancy address, and then receive that email on the Nancy address on the same device. So keep that in mind. So let's click New to create a new email. Then to Nancy, subject, we'll say this is a safe email. Trust me. All right, let's add an attachment so it's not such a safe email. And then let's send it, see what happens. All right, that email has been sent from Walter to Nancy. Let's click the send and receive button to retrieve that email. And you can see here we have a quarantine notification from Walter. This is not good, right? No, it's fine because with what we're doing, we're running this in a lab, but if this were real life, yes, this would be bad. You'd see that it was sent from Walter to Nancy. The email was quarantined, and so yeah, there's a bit of a problem here. So let's go ahead and jump back to the JWeb interface for VSRX1 and check things out. Okay, so here is the JWeb interface for VSRX1 again. Let's go to the monitor workspace. Then let's go to security services. Then let's go to threat prevention and click on statistics. We're going to see a bit of statistics here. We select the SMTP statistics option. We can see some interesting things. We can see there's one session that was permitted, no current active sessions. Now keep in mind, this is just showing the SMTP sessions that are active. It's not showing what's blocked and whatnot, so keep that in mind. Now the other thing we can look at is the security intelligence session statistics, and that will show infected hosts that are blocked, but there's not going to be any that are blocked or dropped because we quarantined an email. So we can see that there are some sessions for that, but you're not going to see much here. To actually see stuff, we need to jump to the CLI. And so let's open the CLI and take a quick look there. Okay, so here is the CLI for VSRX1. We can see that we have one SMTP session that's permitted. We can see that that one session, when we look further down at the advanced anti-malware file statistics, there was a file submission that was successful, and there was a file that meets the verdict threshold. So that's why we quarantined the email. Then if we go all the way down to the advanced anti-malware email statistics, we can see that there was one email processed with SMTP, and we can see that the email was quarantined. So lastly, let's go ahead and jump to the web interface for SkyATP and look at a few things there. Okay, so here is the web interface for SkyATP. Let's go to the monitor section. Let's go to file scanning and email attachments. You can see here that there has been an email attachment that was marked as a threat level 10. We could look into that email attachment if necessary. We can click on it, and we can see here that there's multiple hits. I've done this more than once, so that's why you're seeing that. And you can see the file name, the top indicators, prevalence, things like that, the general information, behavior analysis, network activity, and behavior details as well. So let's go to the blocked email section, then the SMTP quarantine section. We can click on the detailed view, and we can see that there is one email that has been quarantined. And if we go back to the summary view, we can see that there's been some emails scanned. Now notice how it doesn't show any blocked or quarantined. It shows 1 released, 2 permitted. Now these statistics are a bit delayed. It's not going to show it right away. It's going to take some time to actually show those statistics. So these are more historical statistics, so keep that in mind. And so with what you see here, 1 released, I released 1 earlier. You see 0 quarantine, but that hasn't shown up yet. So with this, let's go ahead and go back to the detailed view, and we can select this email with the attachment, and we can add the domain to a blacklist. We can add the sender to a blacklist, or we can release the email. Or one last thing we can do is we can actually just delete it from SkyATP as well. So let's go ahead and click release. We see now that the email is released. We can see that under the action field, shows released. So let's go ahead and jump to that administrator email account and see which notifications we received. All right, so here is that administrator email account. We can see that we received a quarantine notification letting us know what was quarantined, the file attachment name, size, and threat level. We can see here that we get a quarantine release notification letting us know that the file was released. So this brings us to the end of this Learning Byte. In this Learning Byte, we demonstrated how to configure SkyATP SMTP advanced anti-malware functionality using JWeb. And then we also demonstrated how to verify that as well using JWeb. And we also used the CLI for a little bit. So as always, thanks for watching.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Network's certification program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.